No,
we can stop recording and
no, we can pray before, and you can either cut it out or we can just leave it.
I'll let you pray, and we'll just.
All right, God, we just come to you right now, and we just thank you for this opportunity for Leslie to share her story. God, we ask that your voice would be heard, your goodness and your hope and your peace. May her words be clear, and may we stay on topic. In Jesus' name, amen.
That's a true and genuine prayer. Because it can get especially with uncomfortable topics like what we've covered lately, it can get very like, let's talk about this other topic.
Let's chase this rabbit down this trail over here.
Let's rabbit hole quickly. Okay, so we're back. I don't even know what episode we're on. I think like 6.
I have no idea.
I don't know. It's very hard for me to keep track. We took a gap because number 5 had his surgery.
Yes.
And then he ended up getting sick. Poor buddy.
Yeah.
But he's better.
Yeah.
He's back at school. He's
back
double processed and wearing them and using them.
Working on it.
All right, nice 3. So you know,
yep,
it's good. They're there. The option's there. Yep. So that's
the option is there.
So now it's my turn to share my sexual assault and abuse story. So I'm trying to think of where to start because it's not really a long one, but it was a long time ago. Like we talked, I don't really want to I don't remember how I worded that, where I don't want to spend a lot of time divulging who it was. I mean, it was an ex-boyfriend. But there was other people who entered my life who did
other things.
And so it's like, I don't really, there's no one to blame. It's easy to try to find someone to blame. There are people who are responsible for putting the idea out there. And that I don't mind sharing because I feel like, especially in this age that we're in now with social media, mine. So when I was 15, my grandma was diagnosed with kidney cancer, and it was like terminal. Like from the beginning, they told us you'll be lucky if you have her till Thanksgiving. And I think that was May or June that we found out. Yeah, it was a very hard thing to hear. And so I'd started dating this guy through a friend. We met on AOL Messenger, and then we met like in real life at church. And so they shared the same names. So M1 was my friend that introduced me to M2.
Okay.
And then we had another friend named Ryan and a couple other friends that like were just like a mutual like little group.
Yep.
And so M1 and Ryan in a chat room, like a private conversation between M1, M2, and Ryan, told Matt, M2, that I think it's pretty obvious, but I just really don't want to like.
Yeah.
We're so far past it. It's like I don't ever want to have to like run into him and it'd be like. Anyways, I don't ever want to have to run into him this period. But I would never want like legal proceedings because at this point it's a he said, she said thing. So M2 was told by M1 and Ryan that for his birthday, I wanted to have sex with him, and that I had said, even if I was scared, to just do it because I really wanted to have sex with him. Like it was like what I wanted to give him for my birthday. For his birthday.
Interesting.
Our birthdays were 13 days apart. So he gave me like a hoodie and perfume, and like we spent some time together and whatever. And for his birthday, 13 days later, we went to his parents' house. His parents had cake. I think they ate. That was one thing about him, that whenever we were together, we did not eat. So if I would spend all day Saturday with him, he like wouldn't eat. He'd be like, no, we're fine. Like we don't need to eat. It's like he would like starve me.
Interesting.
At like 15 or 16 through 17, he would like, he'd be like, hey, we're going to eat. And he's like, oh, we're not hungry. And I'd be like, I'm freaking starving. I'm so hungry.
God, my teenage years, I could have eaten all the time.
Oh, dude, I still eat all the time. I gain weight, but I can still eat all the time. But yeah, like I think I can remember maybe 5 times in the 15 months we were together that we ate. Other than that, it was like he bought coffee or like ramen noodle. Yeah, it was not. I look back and I'm like, that was a huge red flag that I should have picked up on originally.
No, I need food.
Yeah.
Feed me till I'm pretty.
Yes. So I got him a hoodie for his birthday and cologne. Like that's kind of what we were getting. We were 15 and 17 or 16 and 18. I think it was his senior year, so he was 18. So that's like a whole other thing. And I got him the hoodie, got him this. I started kind of fooling around, and he went for it, and I was like, And it was kind of like this, like, I know you want to, and it'll feel good situation. And I was like, okay, like, oh, but I never said like yes. I just kind of like froze because it's like, I don't know what to do. So that happened, and I kind of was in shock for a little bit, and then it just continued to happen. Like, it wasn't really like a question of, hey, like it was very much like in Bible times, you like we would already be married and we've already had sex, so we're basically married. So like it's not a sin. Like he used all these like weird things, reasonings. And so I was like, well, I mean, okay. But there were multiple times where he like forced it or like actually assaulted me. I remember one time we were driving down the road and I said something to him like I have an attitude, and like there were times where like I would come back out from being like this like shell of a person because of the abuse, not just sexual but like the physical and the emotional. And so I'd come out and like argue, and he would like yell at me or pull over or tell me he was gonna kill himself. And this one time he punched me like as hard as he could in the leg, and his friend was in the car with me, like with us, and he was like, whoa, bro. And he's like, it's not that big of a deal. Like, she's fine. Like, we do this all the time. And I kind of like remember thinking, like, this guy doesn't think that that's right. I don't think that this is right. Like, maybe this isn't right.
Sometimes take that outside perspective to be like, hey.
Yeah, like, oh, this is a red flag. Like, this isn't what I deserve. So we were together for like 15 months. I went on a trip with our church, and I told him, like, I really want you to start coming to church more. Like, 'cause he'd been there but wasn't really there, and he was using a bunch of like biblical reasonings to justify wrong behaviors. Like, we would be married and we've already had sex, like that kind of stuff. And so he didn't show up one Sunday morning, and I told my best friend, I was like, I'm gonna break up with him. Like, I told him this was important to me. I'm done. Like, I literally have no idea where that courage came from, because I just called him and was like, I don't want to be with you anymore.
Yeah.
And then it just got worse. He started showing up at my school. Like, he would park in like back parking lots and like wait for me to walk out. He showed up at Chick-fil-A in the middle of one of my shifts, like after my parents had dropped me off, but before they were coming to pick me up, and bought food and was just like begging me to get back with him. I was like, no. And so I was working in the cash register, and the manager at that point was like, you need to go do drinks. I was like, what? He's like, you need to not be at the front anymore. I was like, oh, okay. Because I like knew he was still there. And they kept telling him like, hey, you need to buy something. So he kept buying something like every hour. And he stayed for 4 hours. He spent like $25 on just like random Chick-fil-A stuff. Okay. And finally the manager kicked him out. And the manager kicked him out at close and was like, you need to go home. And he was like, okay, I will. So he sat on the rock, like this rock at the Chick-fil-A by like where I was working at the point, and my dad parked next to him. And my dad was like, you need to leave her alone. Like, if she's made it clear to you that she doesn't want to be with you anymore, like, you need to quit showing up.
Yeah.
And he kind of like sat there and tried, like, as I was leaving. So Chick-fil-A locks their drive-through windows, and it's like a whole time thing. Well, the manager disarmed the alarm and opened the drive-through window to watch me get in the car, and then rearmed it. It was a very like unpleasant situation. Yeah. And so I was walking to the car, and I remember Matt trying to talk to me. My dad was like, you need to leave her alone.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, like, this is not a good situation. So I remember like getting my dad's car and, we talked for a little bit, like on the way home. I don't remember what we talked about. It was just one of those like kind of father-daughter things. It's like, I remember that moment, but I don't remember
like what exactly happened.
Yeah. And so he ended up getting a job at Hobby Lobby where I like shopped a bunch and kind of would like walk out when I was leaving. It was just like not a good situation. He just was everywhere I was supposed to be. He'd show up at church. And so eventually, I don't really know why he quit showing up. I think enough people were like, you need to leave her alone. And I just would ignore him or scream at him, just depending on the mood and where he was. Yeah. So I have to keep drinking. My throat is so dry right now. So he quit showing up basically, which was a huge relief because it kind of like took the pressure. He did. I do remember one Sunday he showed up at my parents' house with coffee for my parents and asked to take me out. This was before the Chick-fil-A thing. And so he has to take me out. My parents were like, yeah, sure, she has no plans. She's still sleeping. So he was there when I woke up. And he had like kind of, because grooming happens, like we've talked about, grooming happens very like subtly, and it's a very easy process to get caught up in. And he had kind of groomed our family, like to be okay with him just showing up. Daisy, stop. There's a tennis ball outside and she really wants it. But anyways, it doesn't matter. She's just distracting me. So he showed up with coffee, took me out, tried to get back with me. And then the Chick-fil-A thing happened. And then Hobby Lobby happened. My car broke down at Hobby Lobby and he just stood at the entrance and watched me struggle with my car.
Wow.
Yeah. And I had to call my parents because I was like, my car's broken. I don't know what's happening. And he just watched. And then when my parents got there and they were like looking around, he ran inside. And so it was just like, I don't know. Like I look back now and I'm like, what were you gonna do? Like had no one showed up, like what could have happened? Not would have, what could have happened? So fast forward. Can you hear her whining?
Not very much. I did for a minute, but I don't hear it right now.
Okay. That's who's not whining. So we'll fast forward a bit. I have to.
Now I can hear her.
I have to take her outside. I'm sorry. That actually timed out well because I did cough anyways. So
yeah, there we go.
I just had a cough attack and it was good. So we're gonna fast forward a little bit. Because of the purity culture that I was like raised in, I think a lot of us were raised in, especially in the evangelical church. There was a lot of my old church specifically. There's a lot of worth placed on your purity and like your commitment and your vow and your purity ring and all these things. And so, I remember when I was still with him, he and I don't know what happened, but my friend pulled me aside, an adult friend who was like her husband was on staff. She pulled me aside and she's like, y'all are having sex, aren't you? And I was like, whoa, yeah. And she's like, you can't be in leadership anymore. And I was like, oh, okay. And there was no like, can we talk to you? Can we counsel you through? Like, can we know what's happening? Like, you're not being yourself. This didn't seem like it was just very much like you're having sex. Okay, you can't be a leader anymore. So there's a ton of shame like put on me. And I know her heart was in the right place because they believed in what they were doing. And I think we kind of have maintained like a acquaintanceship outside of, they left that church long before I did. And so over time, like we've maintained like this kind of an acquaintance. And I feel like her now versus her then would have approached it very differently.
Oh, probably.
So I was like, I was removed from leadership. I wasn't allowed to sing in the worship band anymore. I was allowed to serve, but I wasn't like allowed to be a part of any of the like stuff that I'd been doing. And so like my worth diminished in my own eyes.
Yeah.
My like place of status, which that was a very immature way to think of leadership as a status, but it was.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense.
At 16, it's kind of like,
Yeah.
you're a leader. Oh, I'm a leader. Like, it's a very immature way. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I was one of those.
Yeah. Well, because it's like, leadership can end up being a cult if you're not careful and you don't have good leaders, like leading you in a servant leadership. It can be this like cult, clique, hostile competition.
Oh, yeah.
And that's kind of what it had turned into. So I was removed from leadership. No one ever like counseled me. She didn't tell my parents, which it was like a 50-50. Like part of me is like, thank you. But then part of me is like, I wish that somebody would have just ripped that Band-Aid off so we could have started healing. And
yeah.
I didn't have to wait till I was almost 18 before I told my parents what happened.
Yeah.
So
because I'm guessing she would have been a leader and an adult, so like.
And she was friends with my parents. So it was like a weird thing where it's like, she was wrong to not tell them and start like a family counseling.
Yeah.
Because that's a, what do we call those? Trifecta issues. Like it's one of those issues where it's like, this needs to go up. This is above me kind of things. But again, old church, not the right way. They did not have that situate. Like they didn't have that set up. So she didn't tell my parents, which 15-year-old, 16-year-old me was like, thank you. Adult me is like, you should have done better. Like,
yeah.
You were wrong.
Could have helped me.
So I was really bitter with them for a long time. And now I'm like, oh, I was probably bitter because I felt like I was not protected.
Yeah.
Like I was shamed and then just kind of like thrown to the wolves because everyone was like, oh,
because people are going to notice that you're no longer on leadership. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what
happened?
What was your fall?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So we were together for a while. I broke up with him one morning. He stalked me. And I remember, like, it's kind of a blur, the ages, because I was 16 when we got together, and then I was, like, just over 17 when we broke up. Yeah. And which was a very long time to be with someone.
Yeah.
We were either together. I don't know. It doesn't matter. I really have a hard time remembering.
Trauma does that to the brain.
It really, like, I've thought, like, why can't I keep those date shirts? I'm like, oh, and the reason I see it, it's like it's all jumbled up. The reason I mentioned my grandma is because she died August 31st. So my family was in turmoil. We were in chaos and panic and grief from like May. And then she died August 31st, which was an answered prayer. So my birthday is the only birthday outside of December, January, or February. Everyone else in my family, for the most part, I think there might be like one or two other people who all have January, February, December birthdays.
Wow.
And so it was like, if she makes it to Thanksgiving, I'm going to turn 16 with my grandma. And that was like a very crushing weight to carry because it's like my cousin is 3 months younger than me and we were close and they were really, really close to my grandma. And I felt like it'd be unfair for her to not have our grandma and me too. And she was so sick. So it was just like either let her like get on an upward swing of healing or take her home. So August 31st, she didn't even make it to my birthday month, which was kind of a relief. So August 31st, she passed away. We buried her in September. And then the rape happened in September. My mom was in like soul crushing depression. I mean, like rightfully so. And so I'm not blaming them, but it was like I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know and he was reasoning with me, and the communication between us had kind of like shifted, and not in a bad way. Just she had teen kids who were self-sufficient. It was like,
Yep.
we were able to go places, do things. And so there wasn't like it was just like it was a huge attack on our family. And so that's why I mentioned my grandma at the beginning, because that plays it's not like my parents just were not there. Like my dad was working, my mom had quit working to help take care of her mom. And then she was like, clinically depressed. And so, I mean, my mom was a shell of herself too.
For sure.
And my dad just worked. He was not home. And so I need to clarify, it wasn't like they just didn't care and didn't notice. We were all dealing with our own stuff. My brother was going through his own trauma. I had my parents had theirs. It was just a very dark season for our household.
Yeah, and it's not uncommon for parents to miss things, not because they don't care or love, but just life, like you were saying. So.
Well, it's like, there were some things that happened to me earlier in my life that, you know, kind of had started to like put me on a trajectory of like being more emotional and like kind of closed off and like kind of changing that demeanor. So I think as I got older, it's like, oh, more hormones, more of this behavior situation. So I never fault my parents, because it was just, there's just seasons in life that are not good, and it was one of them. So anyways, that was really far back. So now back to where he's like stalking me. He showed up at Chick-fil-A, all this stuff. So that was like probably, I was 17-ish.
Yeah.
Probably my junior year. I can't really remember. Going into my senior year, I believe. And so we went on a trip, broke up with him that summer. So the next summer. So I broke up with him in the summer, and then we had all the issues throughout the fall and into the new year.
I think your cough came over here.
I know. I'm like, uh-oh, is it contagious? It's the pollen. I went to the eye doctor yesterday, and he was like, the pollen count is unreal. See? Sorry to everyone who's listening and we're coughing. So I'm trying to stay on task.
Following summer, so you broke up. Shocking.
Yeah, we're into the next summer. So I spent like a year really embittered. I spent a lot longer than a year really embittered, but in that year of like bad time, it was basically implied that I was worthless.
Yep.
That I was not a leader. I wasn't a good Christian. My marriage would be destroyed because of this. And it was kind of like, well, great. Screw it then.
Yeah.
Like, if it's already messed up, let me just mess it up more. And so I ended up, I only had like one outside of a relationship, like intimacy.
Yep.
With someone who I had like major feelings for. And our moms were friends, and he was told that he could never date me because it would
ruin their friendship.
He's a bad dude. Like, he is. Like, so much to the point that when Jason turned 2, I ran into him at the zoo where he worked, and we started having an affair, like an emotional affair. And he was friends with Jeff and I growing up.
Wow.
And it was kind of like I can pull a married chick stunt that he pulled. And so I was spent time with him. He moved away. That kind of obviously faded because he moved like 3 hours south or something.
Yeah.
And then he moved back to Fort Worth after I was married with a kid. Ran into him. Because when you have sex with someone, there is a connection that you can't break.
Yeah.
Which is what the purity culture did a really bad job explaining.
Yeah.
Like, I look back now, I'm like, that's why it was important, but that was never explained.
Yeah.
Or it wasn't explained well to me. So, with him, whatever, met this guy who was my high school sweetheart. I still love him. I still love his family. I'm not in love with him. I just want good things to happen to him. And he was the first person I told. And then, actually that's a lie. The first person I told was M1. So we were hanging out, doing drugs, and I smoked pot in high school and drank. Because I was like, well, have no reason not to do anything bad, so I'm going to.
That's where the church, I feel like, really drops the ball. But that's another conversation for another time.
Yes, it is. But yeah, it's like my worth was diminished, so it's like, why would I not do these things that make me not remember what happened to me for a year? And he and I, M1 was dating a girl I went to high school with, and he made a comment. He's like, I'll always be there for you. And I was like, oh, like you were the night that he raped me? And he was like, what are you talking about? And I told him, I was like, y'all thought it was funny to tell him that I wanted to be with him. And he forced me to be with him multiple times. And that, like, it was a really hard thing for him to hear. Because, 17, they think they're being funny. And it's like, no, he ruined my life.
Yeah.
And put me on a path that I did not want to be on.
Yeah.
And so, the whole dynamic between that friendship changed after that, because it's like, I don't trust you.
Yeah.
You don't have my best interest at heart. And so he was the first person I told, and then I told my high school sweetheart, Ian. I don't mind saying his name, because, oh my gosh.
Sorry.
We're passing it back and forth through the interwebs.
Yeah, through Skype.
Yes. So I told him, and he was the first person to get, like, righteously angry for what had happened.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, okay. Like, alrighty. This is good. This is a good response.
Yeah.
So we dated, and then I think we broke. No. See, it's all jumbled up in my head. My mom was the first person I told on the way to the event where me and that guy met. Okay, sorry. This is all very, like, it's like a plate of spaghetti.
Yep, and you're unraveling it live and in person.
Yes. Well, it's like, I know what happened, and I know the timeline, but sometimes when you, like, try to share the details that get glossed over, you like lose framework.
I think I intuitively knew that as a kid, and I have a timeline through the most trauma-filled part of my life that I literally typed out as, like, in real time.
That's amazing.
That I can go back to. Which I'm like, what kind of, like, I don't know. Not
well, your mom was a counselor, right?
No, she became a counselor when I was in high school.
Okay.
She was a teacher. Huh. It was like an intuitive
keep track of things. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So on the way to this church event, I asked my mom, I was like, what's rape? Because both of my aunts were date raped. Both of my firstborn cousins are product of sexual abuse. At least that's what I was told. And I love my cousins so much. Like, the idea of not having those people in my life, like, crushes me. But I'm very grateful. Huh?
How brave of your aunts.
Mm-hmm. Both of them married those men. Because they were with them. And then they were, like, with them, and then they were forced to be with them. And then it was, so my aunts are incredibly brave women for walking that and then saying, I deserve more. And my kids deserve more. And so we're not going to do this anymore. And having to leave them for a better life. It was very, like, I'm always impressed by their courage, tenacity and courage, like, just who they are. So I asked my mom, like, what is rape? She was like, forcibly, like, being forced to have sex. I was like, oh, and I'm not kidding. I said, that happened to me with M1 or M2. And she was like, what? And I was like, well, see you in a week when I get home from this trip. And I, like, got out of the car and left. And I'm like,
I love, that's such a teenage girl thing to do.
I was like, I cannot be home while you process this, and I cannot be home when you tell Dad.
Yeah. And
So here it is.
Don't even really know how I'm processing it.
Yeah.
But it happened.
It was such a, like, it came out, and I was like, oh.
You're like, oh, thank God there's a bus soon.
Yeah. See you later, bye. And I feel so bad that happened. But it's, when I tell that to people I usually laugh to, I'm like, I couldn't be home. I subconsciously knew what I was doing. I knew that I was like putting it out there right now so that they had to process it. Which it did damage. I'm not gonna say damage. It changed the dynamic of like the relationship between my parents and myself, in the sense that, like, there was a lot of like, why did you not come to us? And I'm like, because no one was home. Like, we were in such a weird season in life, and I didn't even know if, because it's like, I climaxed, so I probably liked it, so it probably isn't right because I liked it.
Right?
So
yeah.
That's not how that works. Like,
yeah, but we don't know that at that age.
Yeah, it's like, and that wasn't a conversation. Like, I knew that my aunts had been in situations.
Yeah.
And like, I knew vaguely. And so it was like, you don't have a baby, so you didn't get, like, there was this thing where I'm like, I don't know what to do with what happened to me, so I'm just not going to say anything. And so I think there was like a frustration on my parents. And as a parent, I see it, I'm like, oh, I'd be so mad if my kids didn't tell me when something happened. But it was just, my dad was very frustrated. And from a dad's standpoint, my husband would be too. It's like, I can't protect you if you don't tell me what's happening to you.
Right? Yeah.
And he was angry. And it's like, I look back down, I'm like, it was a righteous anger, but it was like a misdirected.
Yeah.
Righteous. I perceived it as anger at me for being raped, and that's not what it was.
No, and it may have been to some degree in that moment for him that because he didn't know what to do with it.
Yeah, and then it was like a hot plate no one wants to touch.
Yeah. Like, yeah. Please, I don't want, not me. Not me.
I don't want that.
Everyone's touching their nose, saying they're not it. Like,
that's, and so then, it kind of did shift the dynamic. And I look back now and it's like, it shifted it, but it shifted it to kind of where it needs to be for me to mature.
Yeah.
And have the relationship I have with them now. Like, I love my parents. And I've said this before, like, I'm sad for me when my parents pass because I'm going to lose friends. They're not my parents anymore. They're like my friends. And like, we're on this different level ground. Huh?
Yeah. You need clothes, don't you? My husband wants to work out.
Oh, that's
and
hilarious.
I'm blocking
the closet.
Yeah. That's what door I'm sitting in front of.
As long as we don't see his butt, we're fine.
Well, here. No, he'll change elsewhere. He's just grabbing clothes.
Oh, he's got pants on. Okay.
Yeah, he's got pants on. He was working in the shop, and then he's taking a lunch break to work out.
Nice. That's what Jeff does on his lunch break. He works out and then he makes his lunch really fast and then he eats it. Like, while he listens to calls or works on cases.
Yep.
So I think it shifted because it would have been easy to, like, after my mom came out of her depression and my dad kind of was able to.
There's bags of clothes out there. I have no idea. You get your shoes that you need. Oh, those work? All right, cool. Go get Buff. Where are your shoes?
I don't know. Stop yelling at me.
I will not.
Hi, Ian. Bye, Ian.
Bye. Hi.
Noted. Different Ian. This is not how Lauren and I met.
No,
it's not marry my high school sweetheart.
I was almost about to say whenever you said his name, I was like, oh, it's a good name.
Yeah.
Slowly scooting my chair back so I could.
Yes. Yeah, you gotta get everything situated.
Those viewings, it's a fun episode.
Yes, it will be. It's always I like it when it's kind of chaotic. It's more natural.
Yeah, it is.
So, like I said, like, my parents are my friends at this point. We're kind of not peers, like, but we're kind of peers.
Yeah.
And so, they don't need them to raise me anymore.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I'll ask my mom questions or like, hey, what do you think? Or whatever. But ultimately, it's my judgment, my decision, my call. So I think that
helps.
situation shifted the relationship early on, which later on in life, later on in my time frame, was a really hard thing for me to be okay with, because I was like, I missed out on some prime years with my dad because I was hiding a big secret, and then there was, a disconnect, and so it is what it is, and we have a good relationship. It's not bad or anything. It's just sometimes I see other people's relationships and I'm like, I wanted that. But then it's like, but I don't want what you have now as an adult, where you need them, where they are part of your functioning world. It's like, I don't want that. So there was like it's a give and take kind of thing where you're like, anyway, so at the event that I went to, I met a boy named Ian, and his brother Jacob, who Jacob was older than Ian by like, Jacob and I were the same age. And so he told me, this has nothing to do with sexual assault, which is funny. He told me they were twins. And I was like, oh, sweet. They were not twins. I did not learn that until after like a month of dating. He was like 15 when we were dating, and I was 17. It was, yeah. His mom was like, what do you want with a 15-year-old? I'm like, wait, what? I was like, I kind of already fell into like with him when I didn't know he was 15, when I thought he was my age.
Yeah.
And she's like, okay, whatever. And so.
Dating younger men.
Well, I look back down, and I did. I dated him, and then I actually dated a guy younger than him because M2 is older than me. And I felt like that was one way I got really manipulated, was having to kind of respect his authority as a man, and he's older. And so Ian was younger, and we went to church together. Travis was younger and did not go to church. And so there was like, I kind of dated in that. I dated one from church and one out of church. And so then I met Jeff, and we got married like 6 months after we met.
Hey.
And so I told him, and he was really angry. Actually, the first night I met, I was like, here you go. And I like just dumped it all. I was like, you can do with it what you want. If you don't want to deal with me, it's great. We can part ways. And I told him everything.
Wow.
And he was like, no, I don't mind. And he did, when we were dating, after he processed all that, he made probably one of the most profound statements that anyone's ever said to me. It's like, Ian got mad. Travis got like vengeful, like wanted to hurt him. And Jeff was just like, to me, you're still a virgin. And at that time, that's what I need to hear. Because like my whole worth was wrapped in my virginity, and it was taken from me. And then I just gave it away because I didn't have it anymore. So whatever. I think that was the last one. He made that comment, and it's like, okay. And he did. We lived in an area where we would see him on occasion. And he's like, I saw him today and I wanted to run him over. I'm like, yeah, I know. He's like, I'm not going to. He's like, he's not going to undo anything, but I hate him for what he did. And it's like, we've gone through a lot where there was like I told you last night, there was a very violent time period of like that whole year of like, my grandma just died, and then I was raped, and then I had no one to talk to, and my friendships fell apart because not only was he sexually abusing me, he was mentally and physically abusing me. He would lock me in his room and like not let me hang out with his family. We wouldn't do anything with friends. If we went somewhere with friends, it was his friends. He asked me to record my day at school to make sure nobody talked to me. So it's like, I went to high school with all these people who thought that I was just like this evil loner.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, I'm not that person. And so it's like, I was standoffish. I was hostile. If boys talked to me, I would like get aggressive with it. It was a very like uncharacteristic.
Yeah.
But because I was being abused, it was like, I don't want to make this worse. So I'm just going to do what he wants. And he would show up at school. Yeah. he would like just show up at class. And like I would see him in the hallways. I'm like, what are you doing here? He's like, I just want to see what you're doing. I'm like, you don't even go to school here. You go to school in a different district. You can't be here.
That's crazy.
And so it's just very narcissistic is not the right word. Like abusive.
Yeah.
And I remember probably a month to 2 months before we broke up, I remember doing something. I was sitting, for some reason, he was pissed off, and I like walked out of his room. So I was like, I'm not even part of this. He was playing a video game, which he was playing World of Warcraft. So I was like, I'm never gonna date a guy who plays World of Warcraft. Like, never gonna happen. Jeff has played it since it came out. Still plays it. It's like a whole. He like quit playing when we were dating, and when we got married, he quit playing. Like he was like, I won't play anymore. And then I went out of town for the weekend, and I came home, and he literally had driven to his parents' house to get his computer and was playing it. I was like, what?
What is this?
What? Like I walked in, and he's like hunched over in our dining room. I don't mind now. That's something we've like grown to. Other couples have told us like, I wish we understood that younger. It's like that's what he enjoys. I enjoy something else. We don't have to do everything together.
Yep.
It's created like a healthy thing between us.
Yep.
So he was mad about something, and I remember leaving the room. It's like, I'm not gonna be a part of this. I'm so hungry. My dad's on his way. It was like 9:30. They had been at a friend's house, and like my curfew was 10 or whatever. My dad was coming to pick me up, and I remember sitting on the floor waiting for my dad to get there because he and I had gotten into a fight. And his mom told me, she said, he's so much like his dad that you have to leave. She said he called the police on his dad when he was 5 years old because his dad had beat me to a bloody pulp. She's like, you need to get out.
Damn.
And I don't think that she would ever own saying that. Ever. I don't think she would ever tell him that she said that. But his stepdad was like, you gotta go. Like, we like you, but...
Because we like you.
Yeah, you need to go. And it was like... So kind of at that point, I kind of like started hanging out with his family when I'd go over there. Like, I'm like, let's hang out with your... And I would just sit down there. And then it was like... I just was like... One day I was like, this is it. I either want this for myself for forever because I'm going to be stuck. Or I have to just...
Get out.
And it was like... I called him on a Sunday morning in the youth group room, and I was like, we're done. And he's like, I'll come right now. And I'm like, no, like, I don't ever want to see you again. But I genuinely don't know why his mom told me that. It was almost like, I mean, I do know why she told me that. But in the moment, I was like, why on earth would you say that about your son?
Because she knew.
Yeah. And so naturally, it's like the people pleaser in me is like, well, he saw it. It's like he doesn't know better. But it's like blackout rage doesn't justify behavior.
No.
Like that's what that would turn into. Like he would like get so angry he'd black out and be like, I would never do that to you. And I'm like, there's literally bruises.
Bruises on me, yeah.
Like blood. Like it's happening currently. Yeah. No, I would never do that. Yeah, like I haven't really divulged this, but I feel like this might be something that someone is needing to understand. Like, even if it's not a body part that's being put inside of you, it is still abuse. Like, he took things that were not sex objects or his body and put them inside just to see. And it's like, I'm like, so there's a whole long list of like things I'll never date people who play the bass or play World of Warcraft or do this or shorter than me or this. And I had this whole long list of like angers and prejudices and bitterness and bitterment. And it kind of like started to break free. I remember after I told my mom, kind of her initial response after my dad and I had our talk, she was like, let's get rid of the stuff. Because I kept it. I didn't know what to do with it. And so she encouraged me to like, we ripped the mum apart that he gave me for homecoming. I like destroyed, like tore every piece off and
Mhm.
crushed them with hammers and lit them on fire and all sorts of stuff. And then t-shirts that we made to like go to football games, destroyed.
Yep.
My mom was a photographer when I was younger, and so she took pictures at sporting events. And so she had a bunch of pictures of games that we went to, burned them all.
Yep.
Anything with him in it, like even the prom I went to with him, burnt.
Yep.
And it's like, I looked good. Like, we didn't get any pictures of just me because he didn't want just me. Like, he
Wow.
wanted it to be him. And so, yeah, there's a lot of like property damage on like my own property that I destroyed to kind of release that hold.
Yep.
And it was good. It was really good. I think, I don't know. It was a long, messy process, and like bringing other people into the mix of like, I know what's wrong, but I like adding in those boyfriends. They were good, like people to have in my life for a process. So yeah, it was a real messy situation for a while, but it was good. And it's like, I look back now and there's a part of me, when it was happening, I was like, why did this happen to me? Like, why? And I remember thinking that when I'd kind of come to the realization, and I told my mom, that event that I went to after I told my mom was a church event, a Christ in Youth event. Do you know what Christ in Youth is?
I've heard of it, yeah.
Yeah, it's like this big program, and they put on like these big events, usually at college campuses, and high schoolers come in and stay over the summer. Not over the summer, but over the summer they put on the events. They stay in the dorms for a week. And so we were there in, I don't remember where we were, Tennessee maybe. And I remember going, and the very first night there, they talked about not Hagar. Was it Hagar? I don't remember. And that's so bad that I don't remember this because it's not an important part of the story. It is, but give me a second. Let me search. I can't even type the words. It's important, but it's who it was as a character was not important. Tamar.
Okay.
Tamar's story. So Tamar was raped, and her brothers and father took matters into their own hands. And so
she raped by a brother?
Her half brother.
Yeah.
I believe.
Yeah, because that's when it's David's line, right?
I've actually never read the story because I'm like, I'm not there yet. But I talked to a friend about it because they just went through it, and I do think it's David's because we're there at a David study. And
it was one of David's kids, and so I don't think David did anything about it. I think it was the brothers of Tamar.
Okay.
And took care of it because David ignored it. And the brothers were like, oh, we're not ignoring this.
Yeah, we're going to deal with this. And my friend and I were talking about that story specifically because she's like, the Bible is an active word. And so this is still something that's happening. It's not a thing that doesn't happen nowadays. It's something that's happening. And she's like, it's kind of an off story, but it's in the Bible because it, God wants people to know, like, it does happen. Anyways, they were telling that story that night, and I remember just trying to like take it in. And I've never read the story for myself because I just haven't. And the girl behind me, like, soul crushing sobs. And I remember just sitting there, and I heard like this small voice in my head say, "This is why." And I was like, "What?" Like, no. Like, I don't, because I was wrestling with like, why did it happen? And why did I make all these choices? And so the girl behind me ended up, I kind of like just forced her to like spend time with me. And so we were talking when we walked out, and she told me, she was like, I've been with this guy and he's been abusing me and he forced me to have sex. And she's almost like the same story. And I was thinking, that okay, like, this is why. That's what you were saying. Like, it's not because I was punishing you. It's because I needed you to be able to walk alongside people as they were coming into a realization that something had happened to them. Because I think trauma does turn your brain into spaghetti, and you're like, is that noodle? Does it run all the way through, or is it just like I'm thinking that happened? And so, and the way it worked out is the leader of our group that year had also been raped. And so it was like, it was not an uncommon theme for the people who
were around you. Yeah.
And I was able to tell my best friend what had happened. Because oddly enough, my best friend and I hadn't talked much for that whole time I was with my ex-boyfriend, him too, because he was a terrible person and didn't want me to talk to anybody.
Crazy.
Shocking. And so, but we always dormed together at events. We just did. It was kind of like, oh, they're going to, Justine and Leslie, they'll dorm together. Because they have since like 7th grade summer camp.
Yep.
And so we dormed together. And I think the first night we didn't really talk. And then the second night we talked. And it just, our relationship, it was amazing. It was such a good week. So I remember that happening and thinking, okay, Lord, like, I know you didn't like want that to happen. You weren't like, yes, like, thank goodness that happened to her. But you're going to use this.
Yep.
So, like, I need the strength to be able to just be over it. Yep. And not that it's like magically you can be over it, but I needed to be able to walk.
Yep. Forward.
Confidently.
Yeah.
And then I met Ian at that event, and we ended up being together for like a year or something. And then I graduated, and I was like, I don't think we should be together anymore. And you're kind of like a baby. And then I dated a guy who was younger, which was it was a whole thing. But I'm grateful that I went to that event. I'm grateful that it gave me that opportunity, but I had to walk through like grief, anger, destruction, bitterness, fear. Like, it wasn't just like, I told my parents and I went to church event and everything was better. No. And still, like, even after going to that, I still was like, this freaking sucks. Like, why'd you let that happen to me?
Yeah.
So that's kind of my story. It's still going. I mean, it's still a story it's still my life.
Yeah. And that's something I've learned in our journey is like, it doesn't get removed. It gets integrated.
Yeah. It's like
part of you.
Yeah. And at the old church that we were at, there would be times where I'd be like, I really feel like I want to share like what happened. And they would kind of say like, you don't need to, like, you don't need to glamorize what happened or like keep talking about it. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, I feel like there's a group of people who are walking in a lot of shame.
Yeah.
But then they would have to admit that, one, they had wrongfully educated a large group of people.
Yep.
On what purity is. 2, they'd have to take ownership that they allowed someone who was sexually abusing one of their youth to lead worship. Or not lead worship, but play on the worship band. They would have had to admit that leaders knew and didn't tell my parent. Like, there's a lot of things that's like, they didn't want to take ownership.
Yeah.
And so, so I wrote a whole devotional about, like, despite, what you've been through, God can still use you. He still wants to use you. He wants you to walk alongside people who have been through this or who are going through this. I need to redo it because the person I worked on it with, we're no longer working together.
Yeah.
And so I need to kind of just readjust a couple things, pull some things out that I added for like the podcast we listened to. I added a whole thing about them, and I'm like, no, I'm good.
Yeah.
Like, I quoted them quoting someone else, like a Michael Scott quote. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it wasn't them. It wasn't their idea. It was, so I need to take that out.
Which one? Which thing did you?
The that marriage is hard work worth doing.
Okay. It's funny because I thought of something you had said earlier that made me think of something that we got from them, and I was like,
Yeah. What?
Smoothie versus fruit salad.
Oh, yep. See, and it is true. Like, when I told our old family minister that, he's like, I hate that.
Oh, no.
You're one. I'm like, no, I am 100% a pineapple, and Jeff is like a banana.
Yeah. And they taste great together.
Yeah.
But they don't need to be blended.
Yeah. I mean, you can blend them.
But like,
for like occasionally, you know.
But like, no, that was like life changing in my marriage because I had tried so hard to be a smoothie and to be with him and be him. And I completely lost myself in the process. And so it was like, whatever it is you want, whatever it is you like. So like I was watching photography, like learning courses, and I was watching stuff about cars. I didn't care about any of that.
Yeah.
And, but I wanted to connect with them. So, but that's where purity culture later will be coming in because
there's a lot of that. Like, and I don't think people realize how damaging that has been on them until they start talking about it, and then they're like, oh man, really messed up. I don't feel like that's how it's supposed to be. I mean, he's walking, he's just strutting through the house. I mean, he was a virgin when we got married, and I wasn't. And, he kind of had the idea that, like, I saved myself, so, like, my wife's always going to want it. It's going to be amazing. And it's like...
That's what we were told.
And, well, and the weird thing is we were told, like, don't have any sexual desires till you get married, and then free for all. It's like...
It's going to be great.
So you have to, like... What?
Yeah.
Like, it's not like you kinked a hose, like, you turned the hose off.
Yeah.
Like...
Yeah, no, it is a whole thing. So... One, I want to say thanks for sharing your story.
Yes, thank you for giving me the space to do it. Even though it was like spaghetti.
It's a hard thing to do. Two, I'm excited for you to revamp that devotional. You were like releasing that as we were really connecting.
Yeah.
And at that point, I had options to have money, but in marriage, I feel like I had no rights to monies because I didn't earn monies.
Ah, yes, I feel that still, and it's not from him. It's all like,
yeah. And so I did not buy it. Sorry,
that's all right. There was a bunch of typos in it, and I'm like, oh, praise the Lord! Only like a couple hundred, like maybe 100 people ordered it. Thank you, Lord.
Yeah, but let's get it revamped.
It's my plan.
That's awesome, and I do love how God can and will use anything. That nothing is, but like it doesn't make the journey any less painful.
Yeah.
Any less detrimental, and it's not that you were glamorizing or like trying to whatever, like you are wanting to call people forward and go, not forward necessarily like an altar call, but like,
no, I know what you meant. Like,
hey, like this happens and it sucks, and let's work through it and move past it. Yeah. And not hide in shame anymore.
I think there's like I think sometimes like churches, I'm going to just say churches because I don't think it's believers. I think churches are afraid to allow that kind of liberation.
They can't control it.
That, and sometimes it's the church's fault.
Oh.
Not the capital C church. The lower C church. Oh, you just vanished. Where are you at?
Yeah.
Who knows? I think it's still recording, so we'll just keep talking. Not the capital C church.
Where'd you go?
I don't know. You vanished too.
Yep.
Okay.
There you go.
I see you. Okay. But the lowercase c, like the actual like people-y part, not the body part. I think.
The institution,
and that's where that
organization, like.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's where that whole thing, when I said leadership can be a cult, that a lot of those kinds of things all
play into that.
I don't think it just happens inside of churches. I think it happens inside of everywhere that people are.
Yeah.
It's just harder to be okay with in a church because it's supposed to feel different.
It's a spiritual aspect.
Yeah.
within, and so like, yes, it's within humanity. It's part of the fall. It's part of like control and keeping a status quo is something that like, because it feels safe. It happens within families. It happens within schools, organizations, and churches.
Yeah.
Because we all crave safety, like what we crave. And so if we put these constraints, we'll trick them into thinking they're safe.
That, and it's like, the higher up you go, the safer they want to feel. And so if they did something wrong 5 years ago, instead of saying, man, I was messed up, I'm really sorry that I messed that up. It's like, you're being like ridiculous about that. That was 5 years ago.
Yep.
So there's like a humanity piece to it.
For sure.
I don't want to blame the church, because I don't blame the church. It's just human nature got in the way of healing and reconciliation, and it is what it is. And so in time, I was able to take that into my own hands and not rely on an organization to fix me, because I don't need to be fixed. I needed to be reconciled to my own worth. And that came through, that came a lot more recently. Like, there was times where I was like, I know that I wasn't devaluing myself by being with people. I was devaluing like using sex as a crutch to not feel bad about being raped. Like, it's like binge eaters. It's like, I feel bad for eating, so I'm going to keep eating. Like, I do that. And it's like, stop. But it's like, that's not how it works. You can't just stop eating. It's like, it's a cyclical mental thing that we can't just turn off.
I like that. I need to be reconciled to myself.
Yeah.
I like, that's a...
Yeah. Because that's really...
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really what it was. What on earth? Oh, she's fine. Yeah, my husband was trying to walk as quietly as possible in his athletic shorts, which are like kind of... And so he's walking like with his arms and legs way out. I was like, what are you doing? He's trying to let the dog in because she keeps crying. He was being a good man. So yeah, that's I think that was the biggest part of my most recent, like, not self-discovery. I hate using that term, self-discovery. It's like, I'm not discovering myself. I'm just, but I am, but I'm not. Anyways, like this new, like being in a new church that pours into us and has a program called Soul Care that like pours into our soul, and like they don't diminish sin, but they also like,
they don't agree with it, but they don't.
Well, it's biblical counsel. So it's like, we're all sinners. This is yours, and you need to,
work on.
Yeah, this is yours. But you also have grace, not to continue doing that, but to move forward. And so that's been really good, because I did go to counseling for a while, because there was some prejudices I had that I'm like, that makes me a bad Christian. And my counselor was like, it doesn't, though, because it's wrong, but it's a deep-seated thing that you are actively trying to repair. She's like, so you are not a bad Christian for having a prejudice toward a behavior or a type of musician. And so, or a fear. And so she did, she's like, it's like, I think you're overthinking it because you're afraid.
Yeah.
But being reconciled to my own worth was kind of what I recently realized. It's like, I hold value no matter what my past looks like, and no matter what my future looks like. I hold value.
Yep.
Like, we all hold the same value. Like, Jesus died on the cross for every single person who could ever want to accept him. Like, the person I don't like holds the same value as me.
Yep.
I don't love that.
No, but...
Because I don't value him, but I'm not in charge.
Yeah. The perks of being human and not...
Yes. It's like, I don't have to carry the weight of that.
Yeah.
So, and I genuinely do, because at one point I did like check up on him just to see. And it's like, I saw that he was leading worship at a church and he had a kid. And it's like, you know what? I really do hope that you're okay.
Yep.
And I did not send him a message. It was like my own prayers. Like, Lord, I have to release him and his future out of my place because he's not mine to worry about.
Yep.
And the damage he's done, I
done.
pray is only to me, and he doesn't have a trail of people behind him damaged.
Yep.
Because it's like, I've dealt with it. I have you. I have support. I have people who've come into my life who have walked with me. And I was thinking about this last night, like this journey, like from when it happened to now. And I had this visual of like walking on a trail. And you know, when you're hiking and you run into people and you talk to them for a few minutes, and sometimes you walk, like if you're walking in the same place, and then sometimes you pass people and you talk to them for a few minutes and then they pass. It's like, that's kind of how this journey specifically has been. It's like some people have come and walked, you know, the harder part of the trail.
Yep.
And some people have come off the summit, you know, and are passing me and encouraging us. And it's never the same people in your life.
Yeah.
Through these processes. Like sometimes someone will come in and they'll get you through the hardest part of the climb that you've faced. And then all of a sudden they're gone and you're like, where'd you go? It's like, oh, they took a different trail. Yep. They're going to the same summit, but they took the scenic route versus the hard route. Or you're on the scenic route now and they stayed on the hard trail. It's like, it was this weird idea that I had last night, but I'm like, that's how it's been. I mean, I have family, but family's kind of constant and consistent.
Yeah.
Like they're always there, but at different times they've played different roles in this.
Yep.
And so I don't know, it was neat because I was like, I saw it in my head, like people like passing and walking with and like coming, and I was like, oh,
yeah, I think
so
when we learn that that's how a relationship in life can and probably should look, we then aren't choke holding friends that it's their season to walk a different path or you know, and being able to release and be like, you know what, I'm grateful you were here for this season because it taught me or I was able to, you know, encourage, or this is what, but I release you now.
Well, and sometimes releasing them isn't like deleting a number and blocking them. It's like, hey, like I've actually finally talked to my best friend, and I shouldn't call her my best friend because like that's a weird term that we used growing up where it's like, oh, that's my best friend. And it's like, I don't, because as kids you see them. Your best friend's the person you see the most. It's the one you spend the night with the most. It's your person. It's like, she's my lifelong friend. Like we've been friends since 6th grade. We'll probably be friends until we die, but we'll probably see each other once a year. For a few hours each visit, unless there's intentional trips to see each other. Because right now our season is, she's got 3 kids, works at a school, goes to school. Her husband's doing amazing in his job. They're off doing their life well. I've got 2 kids, school, this, that. We're doing our life well. It's like, I don't need her, but she's there. It's like, if I wanted to, I can call her, but I don't need to call her for anything. So we were talking about that. She's like, you know, it's funny, when we were kids, that's how you determine the value of a friendship is who you spend the most time with. And it's like, that's true. As an adult, it's like, who's the person I can have coffee with once a year and it not be like this big weird, like, so
that's quality.
It's a quality over quantity type thing. And so, and I think that's where the best comes in, because when you go to school, you've got a large quantity, but the quality. And so it was a neat thing, because it's like, I've released her, but
it's not like
you're not my friend anymore. Like, you're free to go be friends with someone else. It's like, you're doing your life, I'm doing mine. We'll run into each other when we can, and
and we'll catch up. And that's my best friend from like into middle school, being in high school. Like, we lived like diametrically like different in the spectrum. Like, she's married, but she's a career, no kids. Like, she's in her own little world. I'm, you know, the homesteading mom of 5. Like, if we could be different, like, she's an esthetician and does makeup and all the things. And I'm like, I bathed once in the last like 10 days. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I don't smell horrible, so I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if we could, I don't know if we could be more different, but like, she's that person that I could call if I needed to and when I want to.
Yeah. But as an adult, it's like, I look now and I'm like, I did go through a phase where I'm like, am I actually friends with, these two? Because it's like, I wouldn't pick you now. And not because you're not, but it's like, me now, has a different, which sounds weird, but it's like, would the homesteading mom of 5 go to an esthetician and become best friends with her?
Probably not.
Probably not.
No.
But that's what makes those friendships valuable. So they've seen the angsty teen into adulthood, into motherhood, and they've been there through like the car rides, crying in the drive-through.
Yep.
Because we got our feelings hurt, and that's what makes them so valuable. So it's like, no, I probably wouldn't. As an adult, I wouldn't even know who she is because she's not even been in Texas since we were 18. So it's like,
right, yeah,
it wouldn't be an option. But I have the gift of being her friend and having met her in 6th grade and having grown up and been through the AOL era to now we have Marco Polo. Like, could you imagine telling middle school us, you're one day you're going to have to just send videos to each other and they're going to look great?
I know.
Like,
and it's not going to like lag. It's not going to be like,
and choppy, like all pixelated.
Yeah. Who knew?
Yeah. And it won't give your computer a nasty virus for using it.
Right?
Oh, man. Technology.
It's a fun one. Like, I barely got to use AIM because we didn't get internet, like good internet, until I was like a sophomore in high school. And we had like one computer. And then I had when I had a laptop, and boys were stupid. And I was just like, this is dumb.
Yeah. It's so my dad worked from Microsoft, and so does my husband. And so we had computers, or we had a computer and the internet, and at a relatively young age. But we had like a family computer in the middle of the house. Like, my parents could walk by at any point, which is another reason why I'm like, social media is so tricky, because my mom could have at any point seen conversations that were being had and like just she didn't, because the way it timed out, and they disappeared and chat rooms were messy, and it's like now kids like on social media have acronyms and codes and all this stuff. It's like, if parents aren't staying like actively engaged in their kids' lives and asking questions and like, did anything weird happen? Did anything make you like, we go through that list every time I leave my kids somewhere, and which is great. It's a really good habit. I'm not upset about it, but it's like, if there are parents who are like, don't know, and just, my kid's a good kid, so they're not doing anything wrong. It's like, your kid may not be doing anything wrong, but someone might be wronging your kid.
Oh yeah.
And that is almost worse.
Oh yeah.
Because it's like, then it's not just that your kid needs to take ownership. It's like, something happened to your little person.
Yeah. I mean, there's some people who, like, when we referenced not last week's, but the last video
last episode.
And how people reach out to me. Some people have reached out has been people who have been bullied and abused via the internet and chat rooms and dark web, and like it's scary. Like,
it's real,
and I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's a very real and terrifying threat to, especially specifically where we live. Like, America produces, I think they produce over 50% of the demand for pornography. And
doesn't surprise me.
They produce, I'm going to say over 50%, because I know the numbers are high. I just can't remember, and I don't want to mess them up. They produce over 50% of the human trafficked people. Yeah. DFW is one of the highest places for that to happen.
I think Phoenix is the next.
Yeah. Any place with an international airport and all highway access is on that list. Oh, yeah. DFW is so big, and getting to DFW airport, not DFW like Dallas Fort Worth, like DFW airport is so big and so easy to get to from anywhere within like 2 hours. Honestly, you could get Mexico, like all those places, you can get there pretty quickly. That you just, there's a fear that I have when my kids are just wandering around the store. I'm like, you stay with me.
Yeah. Allie Beth Stuckey had a podcast recently on a teen. Since we're talking about all this, let's probably add this, and then we probably should wrap up because it's getting long.
Yeah.
But there was I think it's labeled sextortion. We'll put it in the notes, and it's about a teen who it's not uncommon for kids to be extorted. It starts with like someone, a peer who appears to be a peer, flirting, and be like, send me pictures, or here, let's get into this private chat room and have a experience.
Yeah.
In this particular instance, a kid committed suicide because a video was taken, and FBI got involved, and it all happened within one night. And this family was involved. This family had conversations. This family was close.
It's so fast. It happened so fast.
And like they went and they did the timestamp, and basically the people were like, we're going to start blackmailing, like we're going to start sending this video out to all of your friends and all of your, like, send us money. And he's like, I don't have money to send you. And it got to his mom on the friends list. And he's like, I'm trying to kill myself. It's not worth it. And he did that night.
Oh my gosh.
And the dad's now going around talking to schools and anyone who will listen, like, parents, like, be so aware of what, because like we now, like, what happened with you is horrible. Like, we now have this threat for our kids via internet. And via like it's infinitely, and like it was an IEP in Nigeria that had sent him all this stuff. So it was people on the other side of the planet. That he was like, I'm done for. Like, they have video of me. They have. And so at 16. Like.
And it's, and that's a whole nother thing. I have a friend, Brad, whose son committed suicide. And it's like, the suicidal ideologies need to start being talked about when emotions need to start being talked about. And that's kind of his, like, through research and all sorts of stuff. And he's going to be on here at some point. Their life is very busy. But they lost their son during COVID, and it was traumatizing.
Of course.
And their story is incredible, just to see what they've done with their, like that dad. It's like, this happened so fast, and we did all of the right things. And so it's like, even if you do all the right things, it might still happen. And that's gut-wrenching. And you can't live in fear.
No, but you need to live proactively,
and you need to. I don't. It would be of great benefit if you started, like, having all of the hard conversations.
Itty bitty.
Yeah.
Itty bitty.
Start young.
His big thing is nothing. And I even told this to Ian one time. And I thought of this when I was a kid, because I'm a 100-year-old person. And, but I was like, nothing good happens after midnight. Like, nothing good. Like, you don't need to be on the phone with people. You don't need to be in a relation. Like, and the dad was like, between 10 and 6, no kid needs their phone. And so, his new thing is, nope, phones are in my room at 10 p.m. You'll get them back at 6 a.m. Because they're like, what would you do? Because he's like, I had access to he had full access to the phone, but it was that one night. And so he's like, from that point on, like, phones are, and so it's just being aware, and it's being like, I think of, we were coming up in that digital age. We're on that cusp of, like, we knew what it was like to ride your bike somewhere, or walk to a friend's house, or, like, not have a way for a parent to get a hold of you, or you congregated as a group of friends and went, okay, who has the parent who has the extra cell phone, so we can go to Six Flags, and one person has a phone, and you
for the whole group,
quick, because minutes cost money. unless it's after 9. And so we were in that like transition time, and now we have a generation that like I think of my kids and I'm like, y'all literally have everything at your fingertips.
Yeah. Well, and I think because we were coming up, parents were being taught to teach us, like, it's called social media hygiene at this point, but like to teach us those things. No, I'm not going to send someone you've never, ever, ever seen in your entire life to come pick you up from the music. Absolutely. And I'm not going to do that. Like those kinds of things. It was like, I don't know you. Like we just knew that wasn't accurate. And that was something that was.
No, we don't send nude images. Like,
no, like that is no, you don't do that.
But that's not a thing anymore.
And so I think there's, a lot of things that parents can do in social media hygiene and start talking about feelings and good and bad and, just being available. And sometimes a really crappy season hits and it hits everyone in the house at the same time. And
you're going to drop a ball and it's going to be okay. Or it won't be, but you can get through it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, what happened is not okay. But what the product of what has happened, I feel like is a very fruitful product.
Yep.
It's like manure. There's literal crap that happened. But there's tons of flowers and new growth and fruit that's coming. It's like, okay.
Yep. I got buried in shit for a season, but here I am.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, we're good. We're okay.
Yep.
So, and we're strong.
You just got to remember that it will pass. I always hate that when I'm in the season of shit and in the season of dark of like, this too shall pass. And it's like thanks.
Yeah. Well, is it going to pass anytime soon? Because I'm tired of it.
Yeah. But like, it really does. I mean, we could talk for hours, but like.
It does pass. And I think it's like a forest fire. It burns and it destroys. But if you look at the fires that have been burned, they're healthier. They're more resilient. They're stronger. They have better. It's like, and those are, like cliche things, but it's true. Like being on the other side of trauma, and you're on the other side of trauma. Like your boys are resilient and strong and communicate their needs. And yes, what happened to them is absolute trash. But it created in them something that only a situation like what they went through can create that.
Yep.
And so I kind of feel that same way for me. It's like what I went through forced me to become what I am now. Yep. The situation happened and I had to, it was a make or break.
Yep.
And so I chose make because I wasn't ready to break.
Yep. You weren't ready to just lay down and quit.
Nope. I wasn't. Okay. I'm super glad I shared this. And I didn't cough that much. We coughed a little bit, but I didn't cough.
Yeah. I somehow
got it.
Yeah.
It was very weird. And my nose has been running since the allergic reaction in my eye. So I'm oh, brother. But all is good. And I genuinely hope whoever hears this is encouraged. Yeah. And if you need us, reach out to us. We both want to be supportive of what you're going through, a listening ear. I have a problem with trying to fix people, so I'm working on that because I don't like knowing that people are hurting. It's a very hard thing for me.
Yeah.
But we do want to tell you guys that we love you and that it's hard, but you're strong.
And it's worth it. It's worth it. It's worth it to continue.
It is.
There's been times where I've been like, is it? Like, even in the last 5 years. Do I really? But it is. It's worth it.
I absolutely 100% agree that it is. Despite how bad it ever got, it's like, I don't want to quit.
No.
I just need a break.
Yep.
And so, keep going. Take your breaks. Drink your water.
Drink your water. And make sure you fuel your body with like actual beneficial stuff, not just garbage.
Yeah. Social, physical, mental, all of it.
Yep.
So. All right, guys. Well, we love you and stay awkward. Stop.